Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews. Coach guys, my review for Season 4 of The Righteous Gemstones, the final season. Alright, so I know I'm a little bit late with this one. I think the season wrapped up a couple weeks ago now, but I did fall behind. I just had so many shows. I think at one point on the channel here I've been talking about in my Let's Talk Television live show that I do every week. I've been talking about how many shows I've had. I think it was like 10 shows at once that I had. So I fell behind on some, and that's just kind of what happened here with Gemstones. And I didn't want to kind of rush through things because I know it's the final season. I wanted to savor these episodes a little bit, so maybe that was part of it. But anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this final season of Gemstones. And since it's the final season, maybe kind of your thoughts on the whole series, right? You know, how the seasons compare. I'm going to share my thoughts on kind of ranking the seasons here in this video. How it even compares to the other Danny McBride HBO shows, Eastbound and Down and Vice Principals. I'll talk a little bit about that. So love to hear all your guys' thoughts. Lots of stuff to talk about here. And even at the end, I'll talk about maybe the next project, you know, that Danny McBride and his team will work on. So yeah, lots to talk about. Love to hear from you guys. And if you enjoy this review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. But without any further ado, let's get into things. I'm not going to have kind of like a formal structure here, maybe like some of my other ones, because at the end of the day, this is a comedy show, right? So I'm not going diving deep into the details of the plot and all this stuff. I do want to just kind of go down the list of some of my notes here that I had of the season after watching it, and hopefully touch on almost everything from the season, some of my favorite moments, stuff like that. So let's begin here with just saying how this season compares to the other 3 that we've had, right? The total now with 4. It's the weakest season of the series, right? I've seen some buzz about it. I tried to stay away from, obviously, spoilers since I'm a little bit behind on the season here. But I did see this. This was kind of the common sentiment that I got out of a lot of people. Even just early on in the season, I heard some people saying this. And it is. It is. I think it's the weakest season of the series. And I would even say by quite a bit. And that's not to say, like I'm going to talk about in a moment, that's not to say that it was bad or that it's like really, bad. That's more so just saying that season 1 to 3 was insane. All those seasons to me, I think I would still take season 1 as the best, and then probably 3 and then 2. But I still think 2 is, I would say, quite a bit better than this season here. But that's more so just saying how amazing those seasons were, and not necessarily, of course, that this one was a bad season, because, as I said, I still think there were so many great moments throughout this season. Still some just outlandish things, some hilarious things. I'll talk about some more like my moments and sequences, episodes that I really love this season. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much here. The main thing is the plot, right? It's mainly just in the plot where this season falls behind, but the comedy, I like to call them the Danny McBride isms, because he truly does have kind of a set of, things that he loves to see, and so that's just what he writes, and that's just hilarious to a lot of us that get it, right? It is a little niche, I would say. Some people, that I recommended the show to, and I've seen other people say this is, you gotta be in, on the jokes and on, his style, his isms, if you will, to really enjoy these shows. And there is a group of people that I completely understand. If you watch this and you're not really in on it, then this could just really turn you off and you are just not down for this, right? So that is completely understandable, and I've seen that, with some people I've talked to about it, and just online as well. And that is all still here in this season. All of those great things that people like me, and you probably if you're watching this, love about Danny McBride and these shows, they are all still here. There's still some really great moments. Some of the comedy is just off the charts, really, really great, really funny. It's just really the plot, right? Especially for a Danny McBride show where, even off the top I said, this is a comedy show, but for a comedy show, like the plots of these seasons, even going back to Eastbound and Down, but definitely Vice Principals and definitely the first 3 seasons of Gemstones here, they're just so, and I'll talk about this in a moment, but they're just so tight always, right? They're so well thought out. The details are always so, meticulously kind of planned out and dropped here and there. And they usually always, tie everything together by the end of the season. And we didn't see that same sort of dedication, if you will, or polish, I would say, as the last 3 seasons. So to me, that's where the difference lies with this season here. And I do want to talk about, like I've said, great moments throughout, but the cast here, especially the newcomers, right? So you want to start with Bradley Cooper in just the 1 episode prelude, but amazing stuff there. I did share my thoughts on the premiere episode prelude there on the channel. So if you want to hear more of my kind of specific thoughts on that one, definitely check that one out. I'll try to link that up here. But, he did a great job in that first episode, obviously. And then who else? We get Megan Mullally, right? Or Mullally in this season. And she's just amazing, right? Like, she had so much screen time, too. She was really an integral part, of this season. And I thought she just did a really great job. I don't think that's her real accent, right? I haven't seen her in a lot of other stuff, but I don't think that's her real accent. And assuming that it's not, it was really great for the show. Just added that, like, just over the top kind of southern flair to her character, which I thought was really funny. Sean William Scott was also great, right? From Stickler from American Pie, I think, if I have that correct. I've only seen a couple of those, but he was great. Especially towards the end of the season here. He really came on. And I thought he was good. And then, of course, I have to shout him out. Steve Little. It was great to see him. I was waiting. It took a little bit to get there, but I was waiting to see them, see Danny McBride put his pal, right? I think they're really good friends in real life too, to put his pal, Steve Little, in Gemstones, just as he did in Vice Principals, right? In the finale episode, he kind of got a cameo, and this season, he does have a cameo as well. So, really love that. Right when I saw him, I had to pause the screen a little bit, was really excited to see him, and he was cool. It wasn't a big role. I kind of wanted it to be a little bigger than it was, but it was still great. He, played the host of, Christ, what was it? Christ following Man of the Year or something like that, right? I'm forgetting the exact terms now, but so he played the host and he did a great job there. So great to see him come back, of course, his sidekick from Eastbound and Down. And so to see, Danny being able to kind of work with Steve Little, and I'd love to see him be like a main character again in the next project that they do, because he's just so great, and I haven't seen him much in other shows. I don't think he's got the opportunities that he deserves, Steve Little, so great stuff. And then, of course, Michael Rooker, can't forget him, especially towards the end of the season. I thought this was just amazing. I mean, I first got introduced to him from Walking Dead, and I can't remember. He's been in a few things. He was in True Detective, and a few other shows here and there since then. But he was just amazing in this season as well. So, all that being said, really great stuff. Now, like I said about the plot, this season felt a lot looser to me, and I think that's the right word for this. Like, the other seasons felt very tight to me. This one felt kind of loose in just the way that, some of these episodes in this season, especially I think it was like episode 4, which was where they're at, what was it? Galilee, Gulch or something, or I'm forgetting the term now. But anyways, they're at the lake house, right? That they are in the finale, and then episode 4 is the first episode where we see the lake house. And that episode where they're just it's kind of just hijinks of them trying to ruin Lori and Eli's relationship, right? That episode to me is like the perfect example of just kind of this looser style this season, where there's really very little plot in that episode at all, and it's really just this kind of hijinks and comedy. And there's still some really great comedic moments in that episode, some really funny stuff, especially with Edie Patterson and Megan Mullally in that episode, with some of the physical stuff there. I'll just say, some really great moments, but in terms of plot, there's not much there, right? And that's just something that I don't think we really saw in any of Danny McBride's seasons, right? Maybe since Eastbound and Down, you want to say. It's been a little bit since I've seen the show, in all honesty. But that show, at times had that kind of looser vibe, but definitely not, Vice Principals. That was a very tight 18-episode run, and the first 3 seasons of Gemstones felt, like I said earlier, very tight in terms of the plot and just the way that it was developed. So when you're used to such, tight and well-developed plots like that, it makes this season really stand out, right? And that's, I guess, just what I'm saying is, if all of the seasons were like this, I feel like people would be less ready to criticize this season than they would have, otherwise. So I would have really liked to see, in terms of this kind of looser plot, I really would have liked to see the plot, of Cobb, right? That whole storyline. And really, I mean, I guess he's pretty much the villain, right, this season, if you could say that, right? Where all the other seasons had very clear, villains, and that's what's so great about Danny McBride shows is he sets up these villains, or at least the, antagonists, arc very well, right? In every single Gemstone season so far, Vice Principals as well. He spun it down. We saw that as well with some of the arcs, Ashley Schaefer and the like. So, he's been really good at this. And this season, I felt like Cobb, I really liked what we saw of him. And I think Michael Rooker did such a good job. I just would like to see that introduced much earlier in the season, right? The last seasons of Gemstones, it's usually episode 1 or 2, right? Where we are seeing this antagonist. We're seeing the arc of them begin. Or at least get introduced, and then we kind of follow that throughout the rest of the season, right? The listens, right? Scott MacArthur's character in season 1, Scotty is his name, I think, right? The listens, right? In season 2, and then of course Peter, Steve Zahn, in the Montgomerys in season 3. We see this stuff a lot earlier, and this season, I think Michael Rooker's first episode is episode 6. It's the interlude episode, so 5 episodes go by and we don't even know really who Cobb is, or we don't see him yet. So I just would like to see that a little earlier. And then I think also if you had introduced Cobb earlier and maybe develop that a little more, then Corey's turn, Sean William Scott's character, his turn toward the end of the season, especially in the finale episode, would have had more time to be developed, and I think it would have felt more earned. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the finale episode. I think it's really great, and I really love the whole sequence with Corey, but it didn't feel as earned to me as, Peter in last season, or, the listens in season 2, or definitely not Scotty in season 1. Right, so it was just that. I think that's a prime example of kind of the lack of plot here, especially in terms of the antagonist, villain side of things with Cobb and Corey, father-son duo there. That was just, I would have liked to see a little more development. And then you could have had, maybe Cobb bite the dust in episode 7 or something, and then Corey be those last 2 episodes, and maybe, have that twist in there, and then you have that little bit of more time to develop Corey as that villain, and what he does in the finale episode would be a better payoff in terms of that, which again, is something that Dan McBride and his team are so good at, is payoff, right? Setting something up, and they always pay it off in the best way that you would never have thought of, right? And that just was lacking here this season. So anyways, and just a lot of time spent on Lori and Eli, right? And the kids trying to break up the relationship and all this stuff, when we could have maybe had more time devoted to this. So anyways, those are just kind of my thoughts on the plot side of things, for this season of Gemstones, right? And that's why it felt probably like the weakest season, just in terms of that stuff there. So then by extension to this, the kind of next thought I go to is, okay, going into this season, when I heard it's the final season of the show, it wasn't shocking to me, right? I thought all along it would be 5 seasons, right? I think, I'm not sure if Danny McBride said that or maybe just alluded to it or something, but I always thought probably 5 seasons would be about the range that the show would go. I knew that Dan McBride would not be doing a long running show, but I thought at least 5 seasons. So it wasn't shocking, but it was a little surprising to me, right? Because I thought it was going to be 5, and then they say they're calling it at 4. But after watching the season, the surprise is really gone for me. This makes a lot of sense why Dan McBride wanted to wrap things up. and his team as well. I'm sure he obviously wasn't the only single person that made the decision, but it almost seemed like him and the team. It's like John Carsueri, Jeff Bradley, what's his name? I want to say Chris Pappas, I think that's his name. Edie Patterson in the writing room too, and then of course Jody Hill and Dave Gordon Green, his producing team. But anyways, the whole team behind this just felt like they kind of ran out of ideas for this season. And maybe that's just, I don't obviously know, so maybe this is just an ignorant thing to say. But to me, that's how it felt. It felt like they ran out of ideas a little bit with this season. I mean, let's be honest, right? It really felt like they were going back to the well, to me, where they're kind of just repeating the same villain storyline of last season, right? With Peter and the Montgomerys. Peter's our villain. He is, attached to Eli through the woman, right? So last season it was Eli's sister, and I'm forgetting her name now, but Kristen Johnson played her and did a great job. But anyways, it's Eli's sister, who's then ex-husband Peter is wanting to get vengeance on Eli and the kids, and then he has sons who turn on Jesse and Calvin and Judy, right? And then this season, it's his, lover, I guess in this case, or his, wife's ex-friend, who it's her ex-husband, right? Who has this vendetta and wants to get vengeance against Eli and the family. And then his son, Corey, turns against the kids, right? So it's a very, once you put these two together, and especially the fact that these are, consecutive seasons, just one after the other, it does feel a little repetitive to me, And don't get me wrong, it was great in season 3. The way it played out was really great. I think it was pretty damn good this season if it just had more time. But it's just, it's a little repetitive, right? You can obviously just draw the parallels there, whereas season 1 and 2 and then 3, felt very different in that way. So, yeah, it just felt like, maybe they were a little light on ideas, and so maybe this is why they had to go back to the well with this storyline and go forward with this. But again, maybe that's just completely ignorant. Maybe it was for other reasons, and maybe, it was a coincidence they wanted to go back to this, but I don't know. I would have liked to see a little something different in terms of that. So that's in terms of the other plots, though, I think they were pretty good. There were definitely some new ones, some fresh stuff in there that we hadn't seen before. Some of them, with the, Gideon and Pontius towards the end of the season, I thought was a little repetitive, right? We had seen that before, and I would have liked to see a little more with Gideon, actually. Given, how big of a character he really is in season 1 looking back, I really would have liked to see, and I do think Skylar Gisondo, who does a great job, by the way, but I think he did, get quite a bit of work in between those seasons, and so maybe he wasn't able to be in it as much, but I would have liked to see a little bit more for him, especially in this final season. I think he'd get some time, but I would have liked to see a little bit more, something more fresh for him in that way. And then you want to talk about Baby Billy in this season with Teen Juice, right? So I did really like that. I would have liked to see a little bit more of a ending to that storyline, which unfortunately I feel like it was kind of cut short a little bit with the way that ended. But even then, that, Bible Bonkers, Teen Juice, it is kind of in the same vein for Baby Billy. And so maybe you could even say that was maybe a little repetitive between seasons. So anyways, I will say, though, with all this being said, I think Dan McBride and his team deserve a lot of credit for recognizing this and calling it quits at the right time, right? And still, by the way, delivering a really good season of television. Again, I don't want to make this seem like this is a bad season at all. It's a great season, I would even say, of television. It's just not as good as the others, right? And so, while still being able to deliver this great season of television, he was able to recognize, okay, maybe we're kind of repeating things a little bit. Maybe we're retreading some stories that we've already come up with. Maybe we just don't have any, or I don't want to say any, but we don't have that many original thoughts or concepts to do with this family, this set of characters in this world. Maybe it's time to call it quits, right? And a lot of other creators, a lot of other writers and teams like this that are working on shows, they don't have this. They just are not able to call it quits and recognize this. I guess recognize it, and then even if they do, they don't really want to call it quits, right? And obviously, Dan McBride is in kind of a unique position with how much control he has over his series and his partnership with HBO over all these years, and of course being successful enough to say, yeah, I don't want the kind of the paycheck for the next season. I'm okay with that, from a creative standpoint. He's more focused on the creative and less about, obviously, the financial, success of the show and himself. So, yeah, I just want to give him a lot of credit. I think he deserves it, and his team for recognizing that, yeah, maybe they're kind of a little low on original ideas for the show, and so maybe it's time to call it quits, and I do think it was the right time. Obviously, I'd love to see like 10 more seasons of Gemstones, but after seeing this season, it does seem like maybe they were kind of a little low on new ideas, and so that is, ultimately I think the right move was made for sure. All right, so let's talk about the finale episode then, just briefly. It felt like a great season finale to me, similar to those of the last 3 seasons. I think each season, I think it's really, it's often talked about with Gemstones, right, that these finales all seem, especially the season 3 one, right, felt like series finales. Like each one of them could have been the finale for the series. And I feel like that was the same here, though I felt like it was more of a season finale than a series finale. So I do wonder if, they had maybe called it quits after the season finished production rather than before the season began production. Just because, I would have expected maybe like a time skip into the future, seeing where the kids are now, something like that a lot of shows do, or just something that felt a little more final to this show and for all these characters and this whole world, this story. To me, the way this finale ends, like this is still very open, and if I didn't know, that the news that it was over and they were calling it quits for the show, I would definitely think you could do at least one more season of the show for sure. It left open, to a degree after this season. So, that's just how I felt. I felt like it was very similar to all of the finales for the seasons, which again, I got to give Dan McBride credit for because, partially he says because they thought they would just get canceled after every season, so they didn't want to leave anything open-ended, right? But also, no, I mean, it goes down to their writing and their ability to craft, a story for each season that feels complete and contained, right, within each season. So, and that's something I love about the show as well. So yeah, definitely a great season finale, but maybe expected a little bit more as a series finale, where this one felt a little more open in that regard. But just in terms of the contents of the episode, like just really great, right? Like I would have liked to see a little bit more setup, perhaps, for Corey's turn in the episode. But that whole sequence was just so good. I mean, it's just classic Danny McBride. And I also want to mention, before I forget, the Cape and Pistol showdown to open up the finale was all time for me. I mean, that was just such a great sequence, such a great way to tie up the whole Simpkins thing that's been going on for like 2 seasons long now. Stephen Dorff, amazing as Vance Simpkins, really great. I was really glad to see him back in this season after last season. So that opening sequence, just amazing, just really, really, really cool. One of the best, I would say. It's up there to me in terms of the show. Really great stuff, really funny. And so that was a great kickoff. And then the sequence with Corey I thought was really great. Like I said, typical Danny McBride stuff, where you get even like maybe a little bit of that horror element, the action. And then, of course, the scene, where he's talking about the purse, right? It's not a purse. So it's just such like classic Danny McBride, where you have this very serious, kind of scary moment. And then, of course, you're going to get that back and forth comedy there. So, really great stuff there. Like I said, maybe a little bit more development needed for Corey's turn, but it still was a great sequence nonetheless. And I really do love, I want to mention this, but I do love the scene where, Corey is dying after being shot in the head. He says, I think you just grazed me. And he's like, nope, that's a pretty good shot. And he's like just gushing blood out of his head. But so that was a great moment. But as he's, on the floor, and of course they do the prayer and everything, just thought that was a really great callback, right, to the prelude episode that we saw with the original Elijah Gemstone, right, Bradley Cooper, where in that episode, right, he started out as, trying to think of the prayer because, of course, he didn't know he was a fake, chaplain, right? And so the people that he was praying for, the soldiers, died before he even got to the end of the prayer. Whereas now in the finale episode, Jesse is able to do the prayer, or really all the kids together are able to do the prayer, and then, then Corey passes and he's able to hear the prayer and kind of be comforted in his last moment. So, and even just the way that they shot it too, Jesse's in kind of a very similar position in the frame to, how Bradley Cooper was. So that I thought was a really great callback and really brought the season full circle. And it's really that evolution, right, of where we started with the first Eli Gemstone, the first Gemstone, to, Jesse now as kind of the heir apparent, if you will, and he's able to kind of right the wrongs and kind of, he's able to deliver that prayer. So I thought that was a really great moment. And then, of course, to see Eli and of course, Megan Mullally's character, right, come together at the end. I thought that was kind of a nice touch, right, with Laurie and Eli at the end. So, again, that as being the final frame really felt like a season finale and less of a series finale. But really great to see that all tied up. So, yeah, a really great season finale. I thought episode 8 was also really great. So we may as well just get into our favorite episodes now, our kind of moments and that. So, yeah, I'll talk about episode 8 first. Really great episode. Like I said, though, maybe some more development for Cobb may have, had this hit harder, if you will, whereas it felt a little out of the blue, right? Especially when they go down to, the chamber and we see, Big Dick Mitch, right, being held down there. And, some of that stuff, it was great, right? And it is that Danny McBride, kind of comedic style where it's like 0 to 100, just ramps up completely out of nowhere, and that's where the comedy comes from. So it was great, but I would have just liked to see maybe a little more development there. Nonetheless, amazing sequence, with Billy snorting the coke and then charging at him, getting knocked down right away. That to me was hilarious, and of course he gets fed to the alligators, right? Is it crocodiles or alligators? Either way, he gets fed to them, and that was just a really nice touch too. So episode 8 definitely a standout. Like I said, the finale, really great episode there. Some great sequences. Prelude, obviously, the first episode to me, easily a standout, obviously. And I will say, I think the first episode, Prelude, is the only one, actually, from the season that matches some of the, I would call them special, right? Special episodes from previous seasons of Gemstones, or even, episodes of Eastbound and Down and Vice Principals to me. Like, this episode felt special. It felt like something so unique, that you really don't see on any other shows, or movies, even that too, but you don't see it in any other place except for a Danny McBride kind of HBO project. That to me felt very singular, very unique, and a really special episode, there for that first one. So yeah, that to me, the finale of season 2 was there for me. Episode 7 of season 3, season 1 had some really great episodes too, but yeah, it's up there to me in the upper echelon. I also loved episode 6, the interlude episode. I think all of the interlude episodes that they did are just really great, and I want to definitely shout out to all of the younger actors that play the younger versions of all, Judy and Kelvin and Jesse. Just amazing. I think it's like Emma Shannon, J. Gavin Wild, and I'm forgetting the boy who plays Kelvin, but anyway, some really great stuff, and so that interlude episode was great this season as well. But those would be my favorites, those 4 there. But Prelude definitely to me stood out, and spoiler alert, but it'll definitely be on my top episodes of the year once we get there. Yeah, it was definitely a special one. All right, so to end things off then, for this season, but also for the whole show, yeah, even though this season wasn't the best of the series, it's still going to be one of the best comedies of the year, for me, and I, in my opinion, I think it's the best comedy of the year, one of the best. we do some competitors, Hacks, the studio to me, have both been really good seasons. I think I'm missing one. There's been another one, and who knows what comes the rest of the year. Some that we may not even know about at this point. But The Righteous Gemstones has been my favorite comedy of the year every year it's been on so far. And so, to me, yeah, this season, okay, it's the weakest of the season, or the weakest of the series. It's still going to be one of the best comedies of the year for me, no doubt about it. And to me, I also want to make this point in that, this season and just the show in general is just such a reminder of how rare shows like this are today in the current TV landscape. Having these original even just an original concept these days that's not an IP, that's not an adaptation of a book or a video game, from a creative voice like a Danny McBride and his team of people. And this is just so rare. Like, it is so rare to see this nowadays in TV. And I try to, look around. There's been a couple, great original projects. I just named the studio, a couple moments ago. That to me would fit in there. But it's just so rare, to see shows like this, like The Righteous Gemstones, even Eastbound and Down, even Vice Principals. And so it's just, it's really sad, to see it ending now. Obviously, there's, Dan McBride is going to work with HBO again. I've already, seen him say that, that he's optimistic about, the next project. And so I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to be, doing something, relatively soon. But it is sad, to see a show like this go, and because to me, there's not that many on the air right now that have this kind of, singular voice, unique, original concept, on right now. And so I think we really have to appreciate it for what it is. I tried to, in this final season, kind of hang on to that, because I feel like we're really losing that right now. So yeah, really great. And this season, once again, just reminded me of how valuable this show has been. So to me, Danny McBride is now 3 for 3, of course, with all of these series. And to me, I wanted to say, Gemstones, if this season had been, let's say, the best season of the series, I would have put it over Eastbound and Down, to me personally. But because it's probably the weakest season of the series, it's a toss-up to me still between Eastbound and Down and Righteous Gemstones in terms of the top series or the best one that he's done so far. It's really close to me. I honestly don't think I can really say, which one I like better. I think they've both been really great, and that's no, slight at Vice Principals. I really like that one too. I just prefer these two over it. But anyways, really great stuff. He's 3 for 3. Yes, this was maybe the weakest season, but it's still pretty damn good, and still, in terms of the TV landscape right now, really, really special. So I'll definitely miss this show, but looking forward to what Danny McBride and his team do next for HBO. Like I just said, it seems like he's pretty optimistic that, he will be doing something in the near future, maybe take a year or two off or something like that, and then do that. I know there was details about him and Edie Patterson already doing a show together. Sounds like that's not going forward, unfortunately. So it'll be in some other form, that he'll be doing something with HBO, but I don't want to rush him or anything, but hopefully soon he has something in mind, like I said, within the next year or two. And I really do hope that HBO gives him, full budget, full everything, and gives him a chance to create another show like this, because I think we really need them right now. And Dan McBride, a really, really valuable voice, and I really do like all the stuff he does. So anyways, that'll just about do it then for my thoughts on this season of The Righteous Gemstones. Like I said, really sad to see this one wrap up. I'm going to miss it. I really am. I'm going to miss it. So love to hear you guys' thoughts, as I said off the top, of this season, of just the series as a whole, Danny McBride, maybe what his next project will be, all of that stuff. Love to hear from you guys in the comments. But anyways, that'll just about do it for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you then in my next review.